So in this video, I will be talking about a third technique of meditation, which is generally used as a warm-up practice before doing the walking and the sitting meditation. This technique is called mindful prostration. Now, prostration is something which people of various religious traditions are familiar with around the world. For instance, in Thailand, it is used as a means to pay respect to one's parents or one's teachers or figures of religious reverence. In other religious traditions, it might be used as a form of worship for a divinity, a god or an angel or an object of worship. In the meditation practice, we're using the prostration as a means of paying respect to the actual meditation practice itself. So what we mean by mindful prostration is, besides simply being a warm-up, it's also a way of creating a humble and a sincere attitude towards the meditation practice, so that we have a feeling that what we're doing is not something as a hobby or just for fun. It's something that we seriously hope to incorporate into our lives and to make a part of who we are. That what we're practicing here is something of great significance, of great importance, and something worthy of our respect. So this doesn't mean that we are worshiping or we are bowing down to an individual or an entity of any sort. It's a way of paying respect to the practice which we're about to undertake. Not in a religious sense, but in a sense, in the same way the Thai people will pay respect to their parents, their elders, or their teachers. It also can be thought of as simply a warm-up exercise. So instead of doing a simple prostration, we're going to actually be focusing on the movements of the body as we do the prostration. But in order to get a sense of what is meant by prostration, I'm going to give as an example, the method of prostration used by the Thai people when they would normally pay respect to someone higher than themselves. This is because that particular prostration method will then be used as a model on which we can then do our mindful prostration. So in order that you get an understanding of what the prostration should look like, I'll first perform for you to see a traditional Thai prostration. And so the prostration is typically three prostrations, three bows of respect. And it's performed on one's knees. Traditionally with the person sitting on their toes. But if this is uncomfortable, you can also sit down on the tops of your feet. You can do as is most comfortable for you. To start, the hands are placed on the thighs. The back is straight, the eyes are open. And one begins by bringing the hands up to the chest, then touching at the eyebrows, and then out in a W shape with the thumbs touching, down to touch the floor in front. The elbows will touch in front of the knees, and the head goes down to touch the thumbs between the eyebrows. Bringing the head up again, and then the hands up to touch together in front of the chest. This is one prostration. Then one goes on to do the second prostration up to the forehead, and out again. And back up. And a third time. And after the third prostration, we then bring the hands up to the forehead, but instead of out again, we bring the hands simply back down to the chest. And this is a traditional Thai prostration. This is going to be the model for what we call the mindful prostration. So it's a means of using this bodily movement as a meditation technique, or as I said, a means of paying respect and building up states of humility and of respect, of sincerity in regards to the meditation practice. So we begin in the same way by putting the hands on the thighs, and we start with the right hand, one hand at a time, because here we're going to be watching the movements of the hand. Again, we're focusing on the body as our primary meditation object. As the hand turns, we say to ourselves, turning. And we say it 3 times, turning, turning, turning. Again, keeping the mind, keeping the noting, the mantra, the clear thought in the present moment. So as the hand begins to turn, we say turning. When it's in the middle, we say turning again. And when it finishes, turning. We say it 3 times, saying to ourselves again, turning, turning, turning. When the hand raises, we say to ourselves, raising, raising, raising. And when it touches the chest, we say touching, touching, touching. Then the same with the left hand, turning, turning, turning. Raising, raising, raising. Touching, touching, touching. Then up to the forehead, raising, raising, raising. Touching, touching, touching. And back down to the chest, lowering, lowering, lowering. Touching, touching, touching. So instead of going out, we brought the hands back down to the chest again. Then we do the actual prostration. First we bend the back, bending, bending, bending. And then again bring the hands out, but this time 1 at a time. Lowering, lowering, lowering. Touching, touching, touching. Lowering, covering, covering, covering. Lowering, lowering, lowering. Touching, touching, touching. Covering, covering, covering. Bending, bending, bending. Touching, touching, touching. Raising, raising, raising. Turning, turning, turning. And here it starts over again. So we start with the turning 3 times, this time from the floor. And then the hand up, raising, 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 and so on. Touching, touching, touching. Turning, turning, turning. Raising, raising, raising. Touching, touching, touching. Raising, raising, raising. Touching, touching, touching. Lowering, lowering, lowering. Touching, touching, touching. Bending, bending, bending. Lowering, lowering, lowering. Touching, touching, touching. Covering, covering, covering. Lowering, lowering, lowering. Touching, touching, touching. Covering, covering, covering. Bending, bending, bending. Touching, touching, touching. Raising, raising, raising. And then a 3rd time as well. Exactly the same way. Up, and again, each 1 step at a time. Bending and so on. And after the 3rd prostration, we come up raising, 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 touching, 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 and up again to after the 3rd time, up again to the forehead, raising, 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 touching, 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 lowering, 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 touching, touching, touching. And instead of bending again to do a 4th prostration, we instead bring the hands down to rest on the thighs. Lowering, 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 touching, 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 covering, 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 lowering, 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 touching, 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 covering, covering, covering. Once we finish that, we continue on with the walking meditation and then with the sitting meditation. So it's important that once you finish this, you don't just get up to do the walking meditation, you continue on with the mindfulness. As you go to stand up, first you say to yourself, sitting, 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 and then standing, standing, and you stand up, and then slowly go to do the walking meditation, making sure that your mindfulness, your awareness, your clear awareness of the present moment is continuous. So that's all for today. This is the practice of what we call mindful prostration. So I hope again that this practice brings you both peace, happiness, and clarity of mind. Thank you.